Dear brothers and sisters, hearing the gospel of today and also that of last Sunday, you will know that we are going towards what is normally called the end things. And I know that I have told you many times what is meant by the four last things. Can anyone help me remember these four last things? Excellent. You want to tell us what the four last things are? Now tell us. And stand up and tell us. Pardon? Come. Good girl. That's great. Yes, now tell us, what are the four last things? Yes, what are they? All right, thank you very much. You can go to your seat. Yes, but I did not say counting four. I said the four last things. Thank you very much, Excellent. Next time I know you will be able to answer. Yes, can any person answer whether among the children? Bravo.
Heaven.
Yes.
Earth.
Yes.
And I forgot it. And purgatory.
Bravo. Even though we don't normally clap for adults, give him 3 bar claps. Yes, you have got the four last things, but I put them in order. The very first one is judgment. Because the moment we die, we go to judgment. And from judgment, we know whether we are going to purgatory or to heaven or to hell. So the other things follow, the other 3 things follow from the very first one, which death opens the door to. Death opens the door to judgment, to purgatory, to heaven or to hell. So death is the door in which all these things are revealed. And the revelation comes from the fact that immediately we die, we go to our own private judgment. And that is different from the general judgment, which comes with the second coming of Christ. The second coming of Christ is preceded by all these things that we heard. Because in the first reading of today, are we together? Yes, sir. In the first reading of today, we have heard that all these troubles were taking place because the people of Israel were in exile. And because they were waiting for the moment of rebirth. Therefore, all these things, all the calamities were taking place in order to open itself up to the moment of deliverance. Just as death, when death touches any person, opens the door to the four last things. And we notice that here, when the people of Israel were suffering in Babylon, moment in which they were told very terrible things would happen. And the same with the coming of Christ. You notice that in the Gospel of St. Mark, chapters 12 and chapter 13, most of those sayings are connected with the end things. What is normally called eschatology. And the end things that we have heard of today in the gospel, that the sun will no more give brightness. It will become dark. When we speak of the darkness of the sun here in the world, generally what the mind goes to is eclipse of the sun. And when the moon does not give brightness, we speak of eclipse of the moon. All those ones are temporary. They just happen within a very short time and they finish. And weather gets back to normal. The one that we watched in Pamplona in 2000, they told us if you used a string of film that had been developed and put it on your eye, it will allow you to watch the eclipse of the moon. And you see, the eclipse of the sun, how the moon went almost covering the sun. And in Italy it was total darkness, which they call umbra. And the one that is partial darkness is called penumbra. And the penumbra was what we saw in Spain. But in Italy, it was umbra, the total darkness. And the Pope was driven around or was flown around in helicopter as he watched the darkness. That was Pope John Paul II. And that was something very temporary. Shortly after that, the sun came back. Because this happened between 12 and 2 p.m. The sun came back. But the ones that we are hearing are things that are pointing towards the end. And when they point towards the end, they are simply indicating something like the pangs of birth. When a woman is struggling to give birth, she cries, she laments, but the very moment she finishes giving birth and sees the child, will she still remember the pains? No more. Because the moment of trouble has gone. That is what we are hearing today. That when the sun fails to give brightness, the moon turns into darkness and does not give any more brightness. It is bringing us close to the moment in which a new world is about to begin. A new reign of God is about to take place. A new beginning in the lives of Christians, so that they will no longer be taken to the cross. Even the sufferings that they were undergoing, those things will no longer be there, because they would have been overtaken. And that is what the second coming of the Lord is pointing to. The moment of rebirth, the moment of newness, the moment of the new era. In other words, something hopeful, something powerful, something to strengthen the Christians and know that it is not front, and the Lord is the end. May God's name be praised, both now and forever. Amen. So in the world, when we look at so many things, if we listen to news, like this morning I switched on the television, they showed a group of women that say, women help women. I don't know whether you people are aware of that group. Are you aware of the group? You are not. There is a group that they call Women Help Women. And they dress up and go out in the night. And whoever they find along the street that is stranded or is in danger, they all rally around, call the police, call the ambulance, or get the person saved from the dangers. One of those that they found was a woman that was on a wheelchair late in the night. And they had to take her to somewhere to make sure that she was safe. And they found another young woman, whether she came back from work and was kneeling down to get something from her bag. They realized that it was dangerous where she was. So they immediately called a taxi for her. And the taxi arrived immediately and she was able to get home safely. And there was another person that they found in a situation in which there was somebody standing somewhere waiting for this woman to come around so that the man could attack her. And they immediately called the police and the ambulance, and the man disappeared and the woman was taken safely home. So they are doing a number of things to save the lives of others quietly in the night instead of sleeping. And that is also part of the watching in which we are told today. So we see that in the world we hear a lot of sad stories, and as people live, they live daily, day in, day out, and what happens? Many people come in contact with so many dangers and their minds are fixed on death. A lot of deaths are announced. I mentioned to you not too long ago when the lockdown was not yet lifted. I was rushing down to the church early one morning and I saw the chaplain to this school, a lady, and she told me, "Father, please pray for one of our students." I think he was 13 years old, that he has just died. Please pray for him. She mentioned the name, which I'm not ready to disclose. And I came to the church and announced to the people that were there, and we prayed for that boy. And she, just as I was about to move away, she said, "Please pray for this other one too. The father has just died this morning." So you see that we hear stories of deaths. Not only the elderly, not only the adult, but also children and young people. I told you of one of our seminarians that was on his way to Abuja for apostolic work. I was working in the minor seminary at the time. We were expecting him to go to the parish. Just as he traveled all the way from the east to Abuja, he could not get a taxi. He took a machine that was to take him down to Kuje from Gwagwagada. And one of these people driving the power bikes came along with speed and hit this machine from the back. This young boy, may God rest his soul. Because as I'm talking, I remember the situation. He flew off the mission because it was on a bridge and hit himself, the head, the back, at the concrete just before entering the water. He didn't enter the water, but he was broken. And they rushed him to the hospital. Then the following day, we got a message that he was there in the hospital. There were two. The other one was on a different mission. And this other one was at the front. So this other one that was at the front is now a priest. He saw what happened. And when he sent us information, we went to the hospital. We saw this our young son. He was paralyzed because the neck was broken, the head was cracked, the skeleton was ruined. There were so many gadgets on him. But when we arrived and called his name, he simply blinked and tried to shake his head. It wasn't very easy. We tried to get in contact with the parents. They arrived the following day, and we took them to the hospital. Before we even took them to the hospital, we had a call that he had passed away. And it was very difficult to share that information with the parents. Eventually we shared the information. The mother threw herself on the ground and started weeping. The father was very strong. At the moment we entered the mortuary and the son was drawn out, the father collapsed. The mother, who was at the altar part crying, came and saw the son, rocked him, and cried and cried and cried. Then we went back. But the father never recovered from that. 6 months after that, he died. May that soul rest in perfect peace. So, beloved brothers and sisters, as we wait for the Lord, as we have one who pays the price, the high priest that dies only once and cannot die a second time in order to cleanse and purify. May that same blood of Christ purify Desmond and his family. Because of that too, the mom also died not too long after that. So the death of the son claimed the father and also claimed the mother. May their souls rest in perfect peace. Amen. This is why, beloved brothers and sisters, we need to be vigilant and know that life is very temporary. Let us not think that everything is so permanent. And that is why many people in the past who spend so much time pleasing the king or the queen or the president or whoever they were working for regretted at the end. I have told you the story of Erasmus, who was the right-hand man of King Henry VIII, that severed the Church of England from the Catholic Church. Erasmus said, "Oh, if I had spent the same amount of energy that I spent working for the King, serving God, I would not have been dying in anguish as I am dying." That was his anguish before he passed away. But we also had another person. I want to tell you also of one of our priests. He was called Father James Kahala, a spiritual director in the Major Seminary in Enugu. He died in 1991. But he was a very holy man. And he had trained so many priests that at the time of his burial, there were about 23 bishops. And most of these were the ones that he had trained and who had become bishops, because he worked in the seminary for so many years. And he was giving retreat to the Daughters of Charity in a place called Eleme in River State in Port Harcourt. And he told them that there was a man who saw himself at the gate of paradise. And this man had sand in his hand. And this sand represented the earth that he came from. And he saw a very beautiful garden. Everything was so wonderful, so splendid. And he could not enter. And he asked, "Why can I not enter?" They said, "Because you have the sand in your hand." And the man woke up and could not enter heaven. And what happened? He told this story to the Daughters of Charity 3 days. And he was told that if he left all the sand and his hands were free, he could enter. And 3 days after that, he died without completing the retreat. And when he died, at this time he had given up all. When he died, the brand new car that he got, which he used only for 3 days, the sisters took it to go and get some of the things they wanted to use for the funeral. Immediately they moved out. A group of armed robbers blocked them and collected the key of the car. And that meant that he left everything, including the brand new car that he had just got. And that was the end. Till tomorrow, that car has not been found. The insurance started making a lot of trouble, and they did not even pay for the car. So everything went. And he left everything behind in order to enter heaven. The reason why Jesus Christ mentioned this and also saying something about the victory is hope. Because we need to realize that our life is so short. We remember 1 Corinthians chapter 7. St. Paul said, our life is so short that we have to be ready. That those who marry time, for everything is passing away. May the calamities that come our way pass away. Amen. May the spiritual blockades that we had in the first reading of today, the Prince of Persia blocking the people of Israel to have deliverance, may such blockade pass away in Jesus' name. Amen. It was Archangel Michael that came to deliver. The angel that was to deliver the good news of the liberation to Daniel. Archangel Michael came. When it was impossible for that message to reach, Archangel Michael came, the commander of God's army, and he fought and defeated the Prince of Persia. And so the message of deliverance, the message of salvation was eventually released or delivered. May Archangel Michael fight on our own behalf. Yeah. When we have spiritual obstacles that block us from God, that block us from receiving the blessings God has in store for us, may such battle take place and may we be victorious in Jesus' name. Amen.